You did that. You did that. All of us together. You did that. Did you come this morning with expectation? Or did you come because that's what you do at 9 a.m. on Sunday? When you prayed this morning, did you pray knowing that God would meet you there and he would have something to say about that? Regardless of what you were asking for, because he knows you and he knows your heart and he knows what's best for us. Tom spoke this morning in first service about prayer and how it drives what we do. Everything over there in Ghana was driven by prayer. This year we changed things a little bit. We partnered with even more of our Ghanaian friends. There was many of those there was of us. It gave us even more time to spend with prayer and personal relationships, and it made a difference. It made a difference. You all made a difference with your prayers back here, driving us forward when we're sleeping and giving us the rest we need so that we can start out very early the next morning with prayer, with thanksgiving, with Bible study and worship before we even have breakfast. And it changes everything. You don't have to be in Ghana to experience that. You can do that in a couple weeks with Teen Challenge. The ends of the earth also means across the street, as Mike said. We all need to engage in some fashion. We have pastors, but we're all called to be ministers. And this amazing group behind me, we're all ministers this time. I'll let you introduce themselves.
Good morning. I am Aquia Kathy.
Norm Lemming.
I'm Ruthie.
I am Kwesi Tom.
Abena Lynette.
Aquia Sue.
Aquia Renee.
Guojo Kevin.
Abena Peggy Joe.
And in Ghana, I'm Kofi Glenn. We all have a soul name depending on the day of the week we were born. And some Sundays are the some days that they celebrate that. So on those Sundays, it's quite a interesting little battle to see how many Aquias and how many Kofis there are. And you have to put your offering in just the right bucket. And it's kind of interesting because at the end of the service, they will then tell you which of the soul names, which day of the week provided the most support for the church. Very interesting customs that we deal with over there. Well, today we're going to hear from Lynette, at this service anyway. We're going to hear from Lynette, we're going to hear from Sue, and we're going to hear from Kathy. So, you look ready.
Do I have to look on this? Hello, morning. Hi. Okay, I first started this in '06. Can I take this candy out of my mouth? Thank you. I knew that was a mistake. Okay, I first started this in '06, and you know the song He Reigns? Can you hear me? The song He Reigns was playing on my radio, and I thought people who would go to Africa were out of their mind. But I was having problems at work, which was nothing new. And I had a chance I just felt led, driving across the railroad tracks going to St. E with this song singing the African Plain to go to Africa. So I went in March from January. I got everything ready and went when we built the library in Ankasi. This was my 9th trip. And it was a good trip. So I'm starting out with the centipede. We went to the first morning churches on Sunday morning that we planted before. And we were outside praying for the ones who were talking, which was Kevin and Peggy. And this little centipede decided to crawl into our midst. At least he wasn't a green mamba, like last year. But he's crawling along, and we had this, you might think this is crazy, but we were afraid somebody would step on him. So we prayed for the centipede, for the hedge of protection in the middle of the prayer. And he wandered off. Just a humorous story, okay? My big thing was the wells this year. I do nursing. We changed it around this year. We actually had Africans, nurses who checked in the patients, did the blood pressures. We did some weights and heights. And we drew the blood for malaria tests and hemoglobin and glucose. So it freed us up. Usually we're in the medical clinics all week. We never get out. We never play with the children. So we don't build that relationship except in the medical clinic. And you know, when you're sticking them with a needle, they really don't like you to test their blood. So we got out. If you saw, Kathy and Ruthie and then me and Valerie would swap each other, and they would draw the tests, and then we played with the children, and then we drew the tests and they played. And it was a little more relaxing, except for the day we spent with the kids. I don't know how you guys do that. The day in, day out, it was the most exhausting day we spent. But it was fun. And this time I established a relationship with a little girl named Jahara. And we went there Monday night, and she was around me. And Tuesday it stormed. We had the greatest storms this year. And we didn't stay. And then Wednesday night, she stayed with me the whole time, even during the healing services, which can get, it's kind of hard to say, because they have a lot of demon possession, and they go after that, are people who work with us. And I was scared for the kids. We always pray over the kids so nothing can happen to them. And she stayed right with me. But we had another storm, and so I got her name, and that was it. And never, unless we go back there next year, if I go back, I won't see her. But my main job has always been the nursing in the medical clinic. And like I said, it was nice to get, Cam and Kurt didn't have to do as many doctors because they always saw every patient, and now they weren't seeing every patient. So it was a little bit more laid back. So we got to play with the kids. We got to talk to the people. And I enjoyed that a lot because I hadn't played with kids since '06. A lot of people say, they ask why you go to Africa. Why don't you do stuff here? Or I have children in World Vision. Why I spend money overseas and not here? And I think everybody is called to their own purpose, their own love for Jesus, their own what they will do, and they're called. And we have been called to go to Africa. It doesn't mean that if you don't go to Africa, you're not, because that has nothing to do with it. It has to do with what you feel and what you're called to do. So we go to Africa every year. Well, we do other things. And that's how we answer people. That is where God calls us to. And you have to answer your own call. One thing, we did go into one of the slave castles in Shema. They have a smaller slave castles than the big ones. And it was hard to go in those slave castles because a lot of times when we go into them, we're traveling with just a few. We had several, the bus drivers, Joseph, Isaac, all those were with us when we went to the slave castle. And I asked them how they felt about being in a slave castle with us. And they felt sad that it ever happened. But they also, Isaac didn't even know that we fought a civil war to stop slavery. So we kind of gave him a history lesson on what America has done and how it's not, that we're broken because of it. And the only one that's going to solve that problem is Jesus and the change of heart in this country. So that's what I did most of the time. Prayed a lot. We always had a prayer session every morning. And then we'd eat breakfast and then we'd go out. And yeah, it's 95 degrees every day. And we come home, to 2 snowstorms? So if you're thinking you're going to get out of winter and go into, we kind of look forward to the warm weather, and then by the time we come back, it's spring. No. One thing we learned, Renee and I went to something this weekend, and it was the church needs to stand. And listen and see what God will do. But the church needs to stand for the lost and be that block for the lost. Jesus died for everyone in the world, bled, died, and rose. And we need to stand for these people all over the world. America's having a horrible time with our death rate and our violence. We need to be the church. No matter where you go, you need to stand for Jesus. And thank you for your support. I never did talk about the wells. The wells to me are amazing. Maybe it's because I'm medical and I see what bad water can do. The pictures of them standing by the river, that was their water supply. And when China came in to take their gold, they ruined and poisoned the waters. And people were just getting sick. And to me, to see that water flow free and clean is so amazing. I guess that's it.
I guess this year, I looked around and to see what what he was up to, and there has been a kind of a holy restlessness among some of the team members in wanting to go deeper, wanting to have greater connections in the relationships with the people in the communities. And this year we began to look at what kind of modifications can we make in the things that we're doing, in the ways that we're doing them, that can make space for those greater connections and the something deeper, something new. And Lynette made reference to some of those changes. But what we're hoping is that God is going to lead us into a new vision of how to operate the medical clinics and the ministries that we do in the villages to facilitate greater discipleship and deeper relationships. So you could pray for us that he will make his will known and clear, and that he will lead us into that new vision. We have a particular plan about how we're going to approach the communities and the ministries. And we think it's a good plan. We think it's a logical approach. And when we were in the north, we executed that plan, and everything went very well. In the south, it seemed that the plans that we had made and Joseph had made were not what God had in mind. And there were many last-minute changes in how we had to do things, where we had to do them. And it was a little disconcerting as we went along, but if you look at it from a little higher perspective, you could see what God was doing. Instead of having outreach in one place, we had outreach in 3 places. Instead of having a pavilion placed where we thought we were going to put it, God did a thing. The land that was available for one of the pavilions was too great of a challenge for the primitive methods of construction that we have available to us. And so it was that project needs to be deferred or modified in some way. So in order to put in a pavilion, we went to another nearby community. Now, here is a church who has been worshiping God and representing Christ in their community, and all of a sudden, the word comes that a church building is to be built for them. Within 1 week's time, they acquired land, they had it cleared, a pavilion was constructed, and on that next Sunday, we worshiped with that congregation in that pavilion. You saw it on the video, the one with the blue backgrounds, and where we showed the trusses where their electricity had come in already. That was like day one of this pavilion. And the blessing that God made available to that church that had been, we don't know what their history was and how hard they had prayed or what they had expected from God, but he had rained this incredible blessing on them. And then, the places that we did the other outreaches, God alone knows what his purposes were in having us where he had us when he had us there. And so we trust in him that he has a plan and that he was executing his plan. God was in the details. Every year, Glenn and I have, the job, the joy of putting together the video that you saw, and sometimes it's a real fire drill to get it done in time for the worship that when we're going to come and make these presentations. This year it was kind of nice with Easter. We had enough time that it was kind of orderly. But usually what I do is I run to a particular gift shop at the airport in Accra, and I talk to the people that work there, and I find Christians that work there, and I ask them to help me select some music, some Ghanaian music on CDs that we can then choose from to make our videos. And this year, we were at the church with the blue background, the one that I'm talking about, and one of the things they gave us, they said, "Here, we want you to have these music CDs." And they were like, "Oh, well, wonderful, thank you very much." And the music that we used was part of that CD. But what was interesting was that when we got to the airport this year, that gift shop was not open. There would not have been an opportunity for us to have purchased any new music from which to choose for making the video. So it's like, this God just showing off that he had this little detail covered for us. And on a personal observation that I will make, in the weeks and several weeks coming up on the date of the trip, I think that there was a concerted effort to keep me from going this year on the part of the other team. I had some health questions that, had they not been resolved, the doctors were saying to me, "You should not go if you are still having this issue." That issue was resolved. So the next thing I came down with bronchitis. And so just, the week before we're going, I'm hacking and coughing, I'm carrying on, I'm running fevers, I am sick. By Thursday, the day that we were to leave, I was well. During the time that I was gone for 2 weeks, I was well. When I came back comes the bronchitis. It was like there was just a hiatus in the illness that created a time and opportunity for me to go on the mission. I am still getting over that bronchitis. So it's, again, God doing what he does. He really had this mission. He had all of the details. Something else that I am seeing, I am seeing members of this mission team growing into greater depths with Jesus and in ministry. I am seeing people receiving gifts that the Holy Spirit has given them for ministry. I am seeing them operate in a greater boldness. This year it was really a pleasure to hear people being vulnerable enough to present their own witness, their own life story, and then a presentation of the gospel. And the power of those two things combined, the word of our testimony and the blood of the Lamb, will shake the gates of hell. There is power in the combination of those two things. And I am seeing this team stand up and offer those two things together. And I am looking forward to seeing where the Holy Spirit leads us, because I know that we are on the verge of new things. I know that He is going to do a new thing. And I ask you to pray that we will be able to discern where He is leading, and that we will have the conviction and the courage and the wisdom to follow Him wherever He leads us.
Good morning. So what Lynette said, the first 3 minutes of hers, ditto for me. It's like the same exact thing. Cam, Kerr, and Ruthie and I, and Lynette and Val have been working for several months trying to reconfigure the medical clinics so that we can have the doctors spend more time with their patients, be able to get more detailed history, to be able to just sit, talk, and pray with them, which is something they have lacked in years because we've just had people pass through and through and through, and they can only spend just a few minutes with each person to see everybody in the clinics. So this year was much improved with being able for them to spend time with the patients and just to see that interaction that they have with the patients. It's such a blessing because they thoroughly enjoy that, and you're just truly blessed watching how it just comes from them. But that also freed up the nursing staff as well. We weren't tied down to the pharmacy and rushing through people. We were able to sit and talk with people. Some people, hear their stories. There was a young woman in her mid-30s who had had an accident, and essentially she was sent home from the hospital saying everything was okay, but she ended up losing both of her arms just above the elbow. And as somebody in their mid-30s, in Ghana especially, I don't know if you can just imagine the life that they must live. They cannot do anything for themselves. So we were able to hear her story and very thoroughly with our team pray for her, but not only her, but her daughter who had to drop out of school to be able to take care of her. And she was very young, and so she won't have much of a life herself. So you can only imagine the depression and the anxiety that comes along with taking care of a family member and having to do all those things for them. So it was just a true blessing to be able to hear their story, but to also pray for them. I finally, after 6 years, got out of the medical clinics, and we went to one of the Methodist schools to kind of sing to the children, and we had the Bible study. And unfortunately, we showed up just before lunch, so they were kind of rushing us through. But Ruthie and I took on a classroom ourselves. We did the coloring pages that Renee had made and handed them out. And since we were waiting on the story, Ruthie and I jumped in and started teaching them the Bible verse from the story. And the video didn't make it up there, but we have a lovely video of one of the youth pastors talking with the children and just shouting that verse and going over and over with it, and just the joy of their hearts, and you could see it on them, just that they loved hearing and being able to recite that verse, and especially doing it for us. So that was really fun to just be able to kind of relax and play with the children. So it's the first time I've been able to do that, and it was truly a blessing.
So just as we were the ones that that actually went over there to do all this, it wasn't without the long and hard work back here of prayer, incessant prayer. Oftentimes we're asleep, of course you're awake, and that is that engine that drives it forward. Our prayers and the work that we did through the day, we felt blessed. Sue mentioned how your prayers kept her in the ability to actually function. That was generally true for most of us. I think most of us did get sick when we got back for one thing or another. So your prayers are coveted, and they are what makes this thing work. The other thing that happened, of course, is your dollars. And it's not just this trip, but any of the mission activities that we do, we're reaching people from this church, and that's what the Lord told us to do. The last thing he told us before he left us, and before we see him again, was to take his message of love and grace and hope to his people. So find a place that you can plug in and do that. It doesn't have to be in Ghana. It doesn't have to be anywhere in particular, but find a place to plug in, because the blessings that we get far outweigh anything we go through to be able to go to Ghana. So thank you.